This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. House Democrats are calling for an investigation into Attorney General William Barr's role in the removal of a U.S. District Attorney. At least one is calling for Barr's impeachment. And former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book is out this week, although a judge says it risks national security. All this comes as the president returned to the campaign trail over the weekend. Gary Lane has the story.
Campaign 2020 is now in full swing, with the president holding his first rally since March, and as pre-4th of July political fireworks erupt in Washington. In Tulsa, the president blamed the media for spreading fear and negativity about the rally. He also said protesters outside the arena blocked access, leading to a smaller than expected crowd and empty seats.
You are warriors. Thank you. We had some very bad people outside. We had some very bad people outside. They were doing bad things. I stand before you today to declare the silent majority is stronger than ever before.
The silent majority is the least of the president's concerns this week. A federal judge has ruled that this book, The Room Where It Happened, written by former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton, can be released. In an exclusive interview with ABC News' Martha Raddatz, Bolton accuses Trump of putting his own interests ahead of the country's.
He was so focused on the re-election that longer-term considerations fell by the wayside.
Slamming Trump on his negotiations with North Korea and Russia's President Putin.
I think Putin thinks he can play him like a fiddle.
In his ruling, the judge said Bolton gambled with national security and opened himself to civil and potential criminal liability. But drafts of the book are already in the hands of the media, and there's no calling them back. The president says Bolton's book is full of lies, and he may be prosecuted for revealing classified information. Bolton says he's confident there's no classified information in the book. Senator Tim Scott says Bolton should have appeared when given a chance to testify before the House last year.
So for $29.95, he can monetize his national security clearance, but under oath, he would have had an opportunity to answer questions and not just make assertions.
Meanwhile, at the Department of Justice, political fallout for the president and the attorney general over the firing of the federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. Jeffrey Berman sent the president's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to prison and was looking into current Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani for his work investigating Hunter Biden and Ukraine. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler says Attorney General Barr deserves to be impeached for doing the president's bidding. President Trump denies involvement in the firing.
That's all up to the Attorney General. Attorney General Barr is working on that, so that's really up to him. I'm not involved.
The president's critics say he's been pushing for Berman's firing for months. Nadler's committee will investigate. Gary Lane, CBN News.
We're joined now by Pastor Tony SUAREZ, one of the president's faith advisors, to talk about the Oklahoma rally and the road ahead with DACA, a federal program that allows immigrants brought here as children to work. Pastor SUAREZ, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
By most accounts, the president's rally in Oklahoma filled far fewer seats than originally anticipated, and apparently one of the issues was young people reserving seats who had no intention of showing up. What's your take on the attendance?
Well, I think that if TikTok users and young people were able to do that, I think it shows that we can't trust the election in November to mail-in ballots. I mean, what kind of chaos could be caused there? I think in the era in which we're living in, as a pastor, as a faith leader, I've preached to a congregation where I've seen a few hundred, where I used to see thousands just a few weeks ago, but the online viewership was in the tens of thousands. So I think that when it comes to the rally in Tulsa, we can't just focus on the 6,000 or so that were in the building, but the hundreds of thousands that tuned in online. And so at the end of the day, the point is that these young people may have been able to successfully block some from coming into the stadium, but they weren't able to stop his message from getting out, as millions of people have now heard it around the country.
The president's critics have attacked his speech for its defense of Confederate statues and for calling the coronavirus Kung Flu. He also touted tax cuts and improvements in the stock market and oil industry. What are your thoughts on his speech?
Well, I celebrate the rising economy. I celebrate that good things are happening for the economy and the way it's rebounding And I think we're just going to keep getting more and more good news when it comes to the statues and the different things that are happening. At what point does it end? Now we're tearing down statues of Teddy Roosevelt and Francis Scott Key in San Francisco. They're just, at some point, we have to be able to acknowledge the sins of our past, repent for the sins of our past, but we can't completely erase every person from our history. And so I think that's a difficult conversation that's being had right now. But at some point, we need a leader that can help bring healing, reconciliation, and bring an end to these protests and the toppling of our history and these statues.
The president spoke specifically about DACA in his speech. He said everything is going to work out for the young people. What's your understanding of what the administration is doing with respect to DACA?
Well, this DACA issue falls, the onus is solely at the feet of the members of the Congress and Senate. This shows the failure of the House and the Senate, not just under Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, but going back to Paul Ryan and John Boehner. They've done absolutely nothing. We celebrated, we championed DACA when it first came out, the N8CLC, the organization that I represent with Reverend Sam Rodriguez. But we understood it to be a temporary measure, a temporary program. The first word of DACA, of that D, is deferred. We knew that something permanent was going to have to come in place, and here we are in 2020. It still hasn't happened, and we need Congress to understand that this isn't their get-out-of-jail-free card. They still need a permanent solution, and I think that's what the president has stood for and has been trying to fight for during his term as president, is at the end of the day, this is a temporary measure, but we need a permanent solution, and so hopefully at some point soon, Congress will stop playing games, and they'll bring us a permanent solution that will help these hundreds of thousands of children that don't deserve to be in this never-ending political limbo.
And quickly, you've pressed Congress to pass comprehensive immigration reform for years. What's your hope at this point?
My hope at this point is that God would touch their hearts and minds to stop playing politics. I think it's a foregone conclusion that a Democrat-led Congress will not pass something that would come off as a win for Donald Trump during a campaign. But at some point, we have to stop putting partisan issues or partisan wins in front of helping people, and we just need to come to a solution. So if that can't happen in 2020, then this needs to be on the docket as soon as Congress comes back in after the election. This has to be one of the top 3 priorities of the House. All
right, Pastor Tony SUAREZ, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
And be sure to tune into Faith Nation this evening for an exclusive interview with President Trump. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. The World Health Organization is warning we have entered a dangerous new phase of the pandemic. There have been 250 deaths and 25,000 new cases in the U.S. over the past 24 hours, with 12 states setting daily records. A new model shows Florida could be the new epicenter of the virus. Meanwhile, Texas, South Carolina, and California are also seeing a rise in cases. Healthcare workers there say they're overwhelmed.
It's constant suffering and death and dying.
Meanwhile, New York City, the original epicenter of the U.S., is moving into phase 2 of reopening. The Supreme Court is expected to announce a decision in a major abortion case this week. June Medical Services versus Russo is a challenge to a Louisiana law requiring abortion providers to have admitting privileges with a nearby hospital. This allows a patient to go to that hospital should urgent care be required following an abortion. If the law is upheld by the Supreme Court, Louisiana would likely go from having 3 abortion clinics in the state down to 1, as the majority of abortion doctors are unable to gain privileges needed at local hospitals. Joining us now is former Planned Parenthood director and pro-life activist Abby Johnson. Abby, briefly explain a little more the details of this case and how it all began.
Yeah, so, strangely enough, I mean, this is very surprising to most people that abortion facilities and abortion facility doctors they're not required to have the same standards as other medical facilities, that their physicians do not have admitting privileges to local hospitals. But that is the standard of care inside of abortion facilities. These abortion doctors are usually not able to get admitting privileges to local hospitals because of their records, because they do not live there locally, for many other reasons. And so what happens is if a woman has an emergent condition develop and she has to go to an emergency care center, then her physician is actually not able to continue care for her in the hospital. And, these women, they deserve to have continuity of care from the physicians that provide care for them, that perform these surgeries on them. And if they can't have that sort of care, then they shouldn't be having these surgical procedures performed on them in the first place. And it just goes to show just how filthy and disgusting these abortion facilities are. And, in one breath, the abortion industry says, well, we're a medical facility and we're just like any other medical facility. But in another breath, they will say, well, we shouldn't have to have the same standards as any other medical facility. And so the Supreme Court is going to make a decision on this, we expect in the next few days.
All right. Well, how will this affect abortion clinics and rights moving forward, depending on the outcome?
Well, it will set a precedent going forward in many other states. This is something that we've been fighting for many years. State after state, circuit courts have ruled on this, and finally the Supreme Court took up one of these cases for us. And after circuit courts have struck these down in many other states, and so finally we're getting a hearing. We are going to get some sort of results from the Supreme Court. And if they uphold this in our favor, then we expect that many other states will now be able to hold this same sort of really just standard of care, basic standard of care for the patients that are walking into abortion facilities.
All right. Pro-life activist Abby Johnson, thank you for your time and your insights, Abby.
Thank you.
Coming up, why two well-known Christian organizations were blocked from receiving donations from the Amazon Smile program.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Amazon recently cut a few well-known conservative groups like the Family Research Council and Alliance Defending Freedom from receiving part of the tens of millions of dollars the Amazon Smile program raises each year. The company says they won't allow any groups that are on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list to participate. I spoke with Lieutenant General William Jerry Boykin, the Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council, for more. Is this the first time the FRC has been cut from Amazon's programs? And if so, why, or if not, why is your group being targeted?
Yeah, well, we've been targeted before by other organizations, and it is because we're not only conservatives, but we're also Christians, and we're unabashed Christians. We have not compromised on what we believe, our fundamental, the tenets of our faith. And that puts us into a category that is just intolerable for Amazon Smile.
Is this more of an issue with Amazon's standards, or do you think that this centers around discrimination and bias by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Everybody needs to understand the Southern Poverty Law Center is one of the most corrupt and evil organizations in America. And I say that fully meaning what I just said. This is a group of people who were founded in 1971 by Morris Dees. And what they have done is they have exploited, in many cases, poor people throughout their existence since 1971. And finally, about a year ago, their own people came out and started blowing the whistle on them, saying this organization is not only racist to the core. In fact, they use the term systematic racism within Southern Poverty Law Center, but they said they're also sexist, and there was a repeated pattern of sexual harassment there. And then their own people that came out against them then started to form a union within the Southern Poverty Law Center, and all of a sudden, Southern Poverty Law Center, who had stood with unions for a long time, was anti-union. They were against forming a union here. These people are a money-making endeavor, and they are also an arm of the extreme left, and their primary goal is to make money and to further the leftist extreme agenda.
General Boykin, will the FRC be doing anything to push back against this decision by Amazon Smile?
We will continue trying to let people know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is about. And no, if Amazon has chosen to do that, then we are not going to fight this. We've been through this before. We've won some, we've lost some, but listen, we're not the only ones. As you mentioned, I think Alliance Defending Freedom, another organization like we are, which is not only conservative, but is Christian, has also been taken off the list of eligible recipients through the Amazon Smile program. But let me tell you, what we will do is we'll continue to stand for what we believe, regardless of the cost of that. We're going to stand for what we believe, but we're also going to let people at every opportunity know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is. You see, this list, this hate list, is so illegitimate. They have no authority. The only thing that gives it any authority is when either the government or the media starts to recognize it as being legitimate. It is not legitimate. This is something they came up with themselves back in 19-whatever, essentially as part of their money-making operation.
All right, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin with the Family Research Council. Thank you, sir, for your time and your insights today.
Thanks for having me.
Still ahead, why one group of protesters in Seattle are staying put in their autonomous zone.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together
to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Violence keeps erupting in Seattle's autonomous zone as 2 rounds of gunfire over the weekend left 1 person dead and sent another to the hospital. Protesters there are guaranteeing future violence. I talked with FaithWire.com's Dan Andros to get more on the story. Dan, tell us about the promise of future violence from one of the protest leaders in Seattle.
Yeah, well, Ami Horowitz, he is a commentator, and he's known for some of these street interviews that he does. And he went out to Seattle into this so-called autonomous zone and interviewed several people, but one stood out from the others, and she was a woman who claimed to be a leader in the movement, and she did not mince words whatsoever. She said that we're going to have violence, and that wasn't a threat. It was a promise, and she was just telling people what's going to happen next.
They're gathering in the Chaz/Chop zone in Seattle. Tell us what's happening there now.
Yeah, well, the protests are continuing, and the police and the mayor initially just sort of backtracked out of the area. And so those protests are continuing. The city's actually working with them. They helped them construct a concrete barrier around the outside of the area. And more people are still gathering there, and there's no sign of when this is going to be dispersed.
The group is also calling for the complete elimination of the police department. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that was pretty shocking to see, because the same woman who promised the violence, also said that it was time to abolish the police department, and she took it a step further. She said that we should, abolish the entire criminal justice system and the prison system as well. These were not haphazard ideas that she was throwing out there. These were things that she clearly believed and clearly felt were things that they needed to demand, and that is what they're demanding right now: the complete, abolition of all of the systems that are in place, as far as the legal system, the prison, the courts, all of it.
Dan, did she say what would replace the police and the criminal justice system and the prisons? Did she have a plan for law and order?
No, and in fact, Ami actually asked her that question directly, and she said, you're asking questions we don't have answers to. So apparently they don't have a plan for that. And, if we're going to get a preview of what that looks like, you kind of can see it in this autonomous zone. I saw a clip just the other day of somebody who had some sort of a medical issue going on. They were passed out or having some sort of issue on the ground, and nobody knew what to do. And they were like, hey, where's the medic around here? And it was just kind of chaos. So, I guess they don't really have a plan. And, we're getting a picture of what that could look like if it were to actually ever happen.
How are city leaders and residents responding to all this?
Yeah, well, the mayor of Seattle there has been, interestingly, sort of trying to pander to this group and appease them and express support for them. Like I said, they were helping with the barriers and the concrete barriers. She's been active on Twitter, talking about this and speaking about this in positive terms, which is quite stunning to see, considering this group has essentially come in and shut down all the local businesses there in that radius that this protest is taking place in. So it doesn't seem like something that you'd want to promote as the mayor of a city. but that's exactly what she seems to be doing.
Is there anybody taking a stand against the Chaz/Chop zone and the people involved?
Well, I've heard a few comments from, I think the president addressed it at one point, saying that he would consider sending in, National Guard or somebody to clear this area out if the mayor didn't do it themselves. So people are watching, and a lot of people are just kind of, viewing it as almost entertainment, like, well, let's see what happens next in this crazy autonomous zone where they're all just walking around and waiting for something to happen and making these statements. So other than, that one or two comments I saw from the president, there really hasn't been much other than wait and see.
All right, Dan Andros of faithwire.com. Thanks for your time and insights, sir. Thanks for breaking this down for us.
All right, thanks, Mark.
You can watch faithwire.com's Faith versus Culture with Dan Andros and Dale Partridge. It's tonight at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after the break.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Thousands of Christians from churches across the Atlanta area came to Centennial Olympic Park Friday to oppose racism and declare unity from the church across lines of race, class, denomination, and culture. It was all part of the One Race Movement's March on Atlanta Juneteenth event, which is celebrated in many states across the country as the day slaves in Texas found out they were free. Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn plans to introduce a bipartisan bill to make Juneteenth a national holiday. And that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Have a great day.